What's going on, guys? Ash here, and we are back with Power Rangers Prime issue 12, and this is the end of the very first story arc within this series. But don't worry, Power Rangers Prime will continue, which is something we've talked about on the channel before, and of course, we will continue covering Power Rangers Prime until the series ends. But this issue was freaking fantastic. Everyone involved went all out for this issue. Melissa, Michael, Joanna, Ed, everyone went all out for this issue. Because this issue wraps up the very first story arc, but it's setting up future things we'll see later down the line in the next story arc. So, without any further ado, let's get into Power Rangers Prime issue 12. So in last month's issue, it pretty much ended with Volar showing up on the battlefield and the four Rangers being John, Orion, Mark, and Valentina ready to throw down with Volar. And right away, Volar wastes no time and he jumps into action, fighting off our Rangers because, he wants to destroy Rangers and he wants to crush his son because his son is now a Ranger. And this guy is a freaking menace on the battlefield. Like, this guy is a titan compared to the Rangers in more ways than one. We'll get to that in a bit. But one thing to note is when he's fighting off against the Rangers, his giant weapon that he's using has this weird glowing energy to it. And I've got no idea what's up with that. I don't know if it's an artistic choice. Is this guy controlling green chaos energy? I'm not entirely sure. But it's noted that when he sort of goes to swipe with his weapon, especially at the panel where he's facing off against Valentina, is that his giant weapon has this green energy surrounding it. So no idea what's up with that, no idea what's going on with that, and I don't get the feeling we'll get an explanation, but something's up with that weapon and it's worth taking note of. So Volar's able to easily make do with the four Rangers, and it looks like things are looking bad for John until Lauren jumps in to save him. And I honestly thought that Lauren sold out her teammates, but that wasn't really the case. But she was rescued by the VR troopers. So one thing we learned is that Lauren gave up the location of the Rangers, but she never said she would abandon them. And I really like that because we've got all five Rangers coming together, facing off against the first big threat within this series. So this is basically the team coming together, facing off a threat that is much more powerful than them. So Volar says that he's basically going to imprison the five Rangers, throw them in a hole so deep that sunlight will never find them, along with their family members. And this is when the Rangers face off against John's father. And I gotta say, the artwork and the coloring done here looks freaking amazing. And the Rangers are able to work together and basically hold their own against Volar. They're able to knock him down on the ground. And it looks like the Rangers have actually won the fight. And it looks like they've got him surrounded. But this is when things get freaking crazy. Because what Volar ends up doing, and this is where things I was not expecting to take a turn. So Volar, what he ends up doing is says, look, do you think you've won because you've outnumbered me? I have fought monsters far more dangerous than you, boy. And do you know how? And this is when we have all of these different pieces of metal coming towards him. And he says, becoming one myself. And what we see Volar do is he surrounds himself within all this armor and all this metal. And he's almost taking on this sort of Zord form, you could say. And even Lauren calls it out by saying he looks like a Zord in a way. And he almost looks as big as a Zord as well because he towers over the Rangers. So this form here looks really freaking cool. I will say that. Like, the design that we got here looks freaking amazing because, like, all the armor and all the tentacles coming out of him, it looks freaking amazing. So the Rangers are sort of dodging and ducking and weaving while they cut up the tentacles and stuff like that. And this is when TZ jumps into battle, fully grown, as we get their Zord facing off against with Volar's giant form. So unfortunately, we don't see the Megazord combination in this issue. A lot of us, including myself, were speculating or theorizing that we would actually see all 5 Megazords coming together within this issue to sort of see their Zords combined. But we don't really get that. But it is teased that we will see that in later issues, but we'll touch on that in a bit. So TZ is able to hold on his own against Volar, and while this fight is going on, you've got Rita and Janessa watching. And I was wondering, how come Rita isn't exactly getting involved in this fight? Because, she's part of the team, shouldn't she be helping? But Rita is watching and observing because she says if they can't win this battle, then they don't deserve to be called Rangers. So basically Rita is sort of testing what they can do, because if they can't defeat this threat here, then what use are they against other big threats that are going to show up within this sort of comic series or within this universe? So Rita is sort of being that mentor that is sort of stepping to the side and saying, okay, this is their first big challenge. They need to overcome this challenge or they won't be able to fight what else is out there within this universe. And I can kind of understand where she's coming from because, Rita's proven to be very powerful. She could probably solo Volar if she really tried and probably didn't even want to break a sweat against the dude. But she needs to show the Rangers or let the Rangers know that, hey, they need to work together. They need to come together as a team to fight this threat, because there's more threats on the way. So during the battle, John jumps in to fight Volar, but he's easily grabbed, and what Volar plans on doing is using him as a human shield, because you have this moment where Mark prepares his weapon, and he gets told not to use it because, Volar is using a shield. And as he's sort of holding John up by the neck, he says, "This is another test, boy. Will you fail again?" And you have this moment where when he's moved out of the way, it looks like Mark is able to take the shot and pierce his armor, and this gives John an opening to deliver a punch, knocking Volar out, and he's down on the ground. And as Volar's down for the count, John replies back by saying, "I didn't scream this time." And I like that callback because it's a callback to the flashback we got back in issue 10 when John did that test and he ended up screaming, and this is him sort of overcoming that, but not only that, overcoming his father. So it looks like the battle is finally over, and John thanks Rita and Janessa for helping them, or helping him, or helping us, I should say. And this is where things get interesting, where Rita stands over Volar and says, "Your memories are tainted black, and with them there's no going back." So even Janessa is annoyed with John thanking her by saying, "Don't thank me. You think there are no consequences here? Look at what she's doing to your father." And what Rita is doing is basically erasing Volar's memories. And what she's doing is she's sort of rearranging them. And this is where Janessa says, "The more you do not know, but the better. But at the end of this, he will be labeled as a traitor and he will be buried deep in some Eltarian prison. Do you get pleasure out of that?" And even John's saying, "No, I don't. He's my father." So it shows that even though John has these daddy issues, he still cares about what's going to happen to the guy because, he's getting his sort of memories erased. And not only that, he's going to get thrown into a prison. So I do wonder where that's going to go moving forward, because eventually this guy's probably going to get his memories back. And when he does, he's going to become a freaking menace again, a freaking unstoppable force. But there's probably going to be bigger threats out there within the Power Rangers Prime universe. But this is where sort of the battle wraps up and we have this sort of aftermath. But we have one final word from Janessa by saying, "You are my son. I will destroy worlds for you, but even I have my limits. And if you want to save your friends, then you must learn to live without them." And this is something we were sort of hinted at with the solicitations where John is going to go back to Eltar, and we'll see that later on in the issue. But we sort of have the aftermath of the battle, and John is preparing to leave for Eltar. So he hugs his friends goodbye, he goes outside, and you've got Mark taking out the trash, and John and Mark meet up, and they share a passionate kiss with each other. And it's a nice little moment. I mean, this sort of relationship between the two of them had been built up for the longest time, and now it finally pays off. So we'll see where that relationship between the two characters is going to go moving forward, and we'll see what's going to happen in issue 13 and moving forward. So we'll see what Melissa is going to do with these two characters. So after that, we then have Valentina and Ryan still breaking up, where Valentina has this moment where she breaks down crying, and it's kind of a sad moment where she says, "I'm not a perfect person, Ryan. I know that, but we both know I never really liked me." So Valentina is someone who's never been happy with herself. "I liked being a ranger, it makes sense. And I know this world isn't ready for whatever that means, because I'm not ready for it either. But I think I need it, and I think I need them," referring to the Rangers. And Ryan says, "More than you need me?" And she says, "You know the answer to that." And she says, "Always, in the end, I'll always need you." So Ryan ends up speeding off on his bike. So who knows if we'll see Ryan show up again in the series, whether he's going to go off for a couple of issues and show up later, or we'll see where his story goes in the VR Troopers comic book story. Maybe that ties into this whole talk that they have. I'm not entirely sure. But it looks like Valentina and Ryan ended up breaking up. So who knows if we'll see Ryan again in the nearby future. So in the aftermath of this as well, you cut to the command center or the power chamber we've seen before, and Bulk has a request for Rita by saying, "Make me a Power Ranger." And Rita's like, "No, I'm not going to do it." And Bulk's like, "Please." And Janessa walks in and says, "No more Rangers." And this is where Rita is like an absolute tease to her by saying, "Oh, Janessa, many others have attempted to give me orders and landed them in much darker place, and they've landed in a much darker place because of that." And Janessa's like, "Look, we have an understanding, Rita. Your freedom depends on it. Now tell me you'll play nice. No morphing, no Rangers. This world does not need you." And Rita's like, "And what if I have a different opinion?" And Janessa's like, "Not even your magic will save you." So after that, the sort of aftermath continues, where you have Lauren going back to the prison cell where her father was being kept, and I believe it's Jaden as well. And Orion's like, "Look, are you sure this is the place?" And Lauren's like, "He was. I saw him, Orion. They took him. They took my brother. They took everything." And Orion's like, "Not everything. We still have each other. And I know we're in the wake of this, and it doesn't feel like much, but I lost my entire world." Which I do wonder, I get the feeling we're going to explore the next story arc for Orion, because, you know, his entire world was destroyed. And I do wonder when we're going to explore that and get the Orion-focused flashback in the nearby future. Like, it has to be soon. Like, I feel like he's like one of the other Rangers that hasn't had his focus issue, and I'm sure that Melissa is planning on it very soon with sort of teasers of Rita and Orion sort of going off on their own in the next story arc. So we'll see where that's going to go moving forward. Now, the epilogue does continue, but it is drawn to a close as Rita makes this big speech. You've got Valentina sort of working at the markets, and what's really interesting is you do see a close-up on this cloaked figure. Whether that's some random civilian or maybe someone who's going to be important, I've got no idea, but it looks like Valentina's sort of helping people out in need. You've got Mark and Orion sort of looking at the schematics of what they plan on doing, and I'm really freaking excited for it, where Mark says, "How many more do you think we can build before they catch on?" And Orion says, "I'm thinking 5. So that means they're going to build 5 more Zords like TZ, and I'm really looking forward to that. Lauren has sort of moved into the university going under the name Lauren Rhodes. John, it looks like he's probably moved back to Eltar, but Rita does say about this by saying, "The world needs Power Rangers, so we will become what this world needs, a prime version of a Ranger. We will hide in plain sight, we will assimilate, and when the next challenge comes, we will be ready." And that's pretty much where this first story arc ends. And I gotta say, it was pretty freaking cool. I really enjoyed this issue. The fight scene was really cool. I think it wrapped up really well because it's setting up things for future issues. and we'll see where that's going to go moving forward. But overall, the first year of Power Rangers Prime, in my opinion, was really solid, and I can't wait to see where Melissa is going to take the series moving forward next. So, with that said, I will bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will see you guys later. Peace out, take care, bye.